Today we're fixing the roof on this old 40 series Landcruiser, and we're getting it from this to this. I have lost count how many of the last few weeks I have spent cutting, grinding, welding, sanding, painting, fixing this roof. It has taken all of my skill set to remove the farm fixes that were being put into this thing. There was a horrendous amount of fiberglass all the way through it. Watch along and you'll see me change this thing from completely toast to a near new factory roof on this HJ45 Landcruiser. There's a lot to be done on this roof before it goes back on this vehicle. Looks can be deceiving when it's on there. There is a lot of rust that was found underneath this thing when I lifted it up. It's still salvageable. In particular, make sure that I'm welding in spots that are actually going to be bolting the roof down. So I've spent the money to get brand new seals to go between this and the roof of the 40. So I want to make sure that when this goes on, it's staying on for a very long time and I'm not going to have to take it off to fix more rust. You can see that years of water ingress has eaten away at the side of this thing, so it's in much need of some love. So to start with, I've got some big bits of steel that I'm going to weld back in here and replace everything. And I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm going to be learning as I go as well. So we shall see how it turns out. Anyway, if it saves me spending $600 on a repop of one of these hoods, then I'll be happy because these fit a lot better, or at least a brand new a good condition factory one should fit a lot better. After I get my hands on it, we'll see how it goes. Let's go though. The spots you're seeing rust in this roof are not uncommon at all. In fact, just about every 40 series seems to rust in these areas. So while it'd be nice if I could just cut these sections out of a donor roof and weld them in, it seems like they just don't exist. I'm no metal worker, so this is all very much a learn as you go experience. And I definitely know the measure twice, cut once rule. Don't always follow it, but that's well off the line that I've set out. I don't know how I got that far off. Taking a little bit of extra care to get these last couple of bolt holes sorted, and I've pretty much got them all lined up as they should, except for that first one. I don't know what went wrong there. I just thought the metal might have bent for a second or something. These aren't the final bolts I'm going to be using. They're all ratted out, but I've just got to die grind out that one slightly. And then once that's sorted, trim it to shape, and then I can cut this out where it's going to stay there and weld it in, and also weld some nuts on the bottom of this thing. Put them in. Oh, and I'm probably going to take this one and mirror it for the other one so I don't need to go through all this business again, or at least be pretty close to it. That fits. Sweet. Now to make the passenger side. I've been putting off this job for a long time, mostly because I wanted to build up the skills and confidence before having a crack at it. It's still a massive learning experience in itself, but I'm definitely glad that I've spent so much time on other jobs first, as all of that experience is making this job a whole lot less intimidating. Those are all lining up as I hoped, which is nice. All right, now that I have both sides of this drilled out the way I want, I can perfectly line it up with the original bolt holes, and then I'm actually going to trace out the shape for where I need to cut out the old steel, weld this new one in. What I'm actually planning to do is bolt it all down and make sure the outline of where this is perfect, and also do a couple little lines across here to make sure everything lines up exactly the way it should. The bottom of this bolts to the top of the roof on the cab of the 40. There's probably a little bit of wiggle room, but I want it to be as accurate as possible. So these new parts of this bracket, I want it to bolt in exactly where it was from factory. So Let me do my best here. Driver side done there. Everything's lining up pretty much as I want it to. I'm sure I'll get it all welded up and consider that I should have done this a bit better in some way or another, but as far as I can tell, that's going to tack up really well. All right, so time to move on to the passenger one. I'll get that cut out and then I'll weld them both up at the same time. Back into working on this thing today. I've got my bits of steel cut out that's going to replace the old bits there. What I need to do, or what I've done is gone and bought a bunch of fresh bolts for everything to thread back into the areas where they were, that I've drilled out. What I need to do though is weld on a nut that's going to go on the bottom of this, like the old one, so that these bolts can thread into them though. Can do a basic standard little hex nut if you wanted to, but I thought I would go ahead and try and get something similar to the square nuts that we used on the original steel, and it proved pretty hard to get, but I think I've got something that's going to work. So ideally, to weld this onto steel, you want a steel nut, not anything that's galvanized or zinc coated. It's pretty hard to find anything that's not that, but what I've got is a set of these cage nuts. So they're a little square nut, and then they've got a little additional thing that goes over the top of them. I'm gonna bend that off and get rid of it because it's of no use to me. I just want the actual nut that's in there. But then that's gonna work well. I can just kind of flap down the edges of those and get the zinc coating off and tack that down. Very similar to how the original ones were done. I forgot to mention these little buggers are bloody expensive with the cages, but they don't really seem to be available without them. Maybe I'm completely missing on the mark on where I can find them, but just my typical, I went to 2 different bolt shops and that's all they had to offer. It took a little bit more effort than one might think to get all that off. You can see all the remnants of it, all the zinc all over my fingers, but it seemed like the quickest way to do it, just with that and one of these. Did the job. Anyway, time to take these and weld them up. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to bolt them together through the original piece that I have cut out. So hopefully I can make sure that the new length of steel that I weld in is in the exact spot that it should, but at least it's making sure that these 4 bolts are all kind of aligned to each other as they were in the original cast. All right, scratch that. That's actually the piece that I needed to line up with this side, so I'm just going to use old bolts that I'm not worried about and just line them up with the holes that I've drilled, which are going to be, there's not much wiggle room that can be had there. It's going to be accurate enough. Have those tight in place. We'll tack those up like that. That'll be perfect. It's something I want to quickly touch on here, and I'd love for an experienced welder to comment here and explain further what could be done better. But as you probably noticed, I'm welding zinc coated nuts onto this. Ideally, you want to remove all the zinc for a better weld, but zinc coatings can also create a pretty toxic fume if you're welding, which is no good. So I tacked up the first one and kind of thought about it for a second. I was like, don't love this. There's proper apparatuses that you can buy. They're very expensive. Arguably, health is more important than money, but I don't have the funds to be going out and get that for a couple of bolts. I've chucked a respirator on, and I've also just chucked a fan on here just to get some ventilation going in the area that I'm doing. I'm hoping that's kind of enough for these. I probably could have cleaned up the zinc nuts even further, but I made sure where I was welding there was absolutely nothing left on them. But yeah, it's probably something you don't want to mess around with, but I'd love for someone to comment a little bit more on what I probably should be doing better. Anyway, if you're doing this kind of stuff yourself, Google it. Once this is welded in, I'm not going to be able to see under there very easily again. So I'm going to put some weld through primer on the base of this before it goes in, and also in under here just to keep everything protected. There's already a bit of corrosion coming through. This roof is not a perfect example. It's not going to last forever, but I'm trying to breathe as much life into it as I can. And at least for the bits that I'm touching, I'm going to try and make sure that they outlast the rest. But you can see from a lot of this, there's a lot going on with it. So spraying these up, and I'll then move on to tacking these in. Little respirator going. Lungs are not thanking me today already. All right, well, my phone has told me it's time to quit for the day because it actually ran out of battery as I was filming that last bit, but everything's tacked in on the roof. Calling it quits for today. Tomorrow's job is I'm gonna flap that back and tidy it up, make it as flat as possible, and see if I can mount it up to the roof and just absolutely make sure everything's bolting up the way it should before I fully weld it in. So I'm gonna do that tomorrow. See ya. All right, results are in. Everything pretty much perfectly lines up where I want it to be. I'm shocked as you are. All the bolt holes that I've drilled are just about spot on. Most of them are exactly where they need to be. There's just 2 or 3 that I just need to just die grind out just a little bit just for the bolts to slip in a little bit better. I'll show you what I mean by that. What bolts into these is this rail. So there's a few points that bolt onto the front windscreen and also the windscreen there, and then also the back of the cab. But then they bolt down there to this factory point, and everything lines up there. What I'm actually going to do, there's just a couple little bits I just want to die grind out there just to make things line up just a little bit better after the dummy fit. Keep in mind as well, there's going to be a roof seal going on top of this, so it might change things a little bit as well, but for the most part everything's lining up there, so I'm just going to do that quickly. You might be wondering why I'm modifying the factory part instead of the piece I've made. It's because this factory bracket has plenty of adjustment before it's bolted down, so widening these holes gives me the flexibility I need. Trying to do that on the roof would have been a lot riskier. All right, time to weld this up fully and then I'm done for the day. So, if you're a regular watcher of my videos, you might have noticed I haven't put anything out for a few months and wondered where I've been. First of all, if you've been watching that closely, I appreciate you a lot. But aside from this bloody roof taking an ungodly amount of time, I've had a few pretty major things taking up my time. First, I was lucky enough to be involved in a content campaign for work that took me down to the Flinders Ranges in South Australia. The trip was a full-on 2 weeks, starting with flying into Adelaide, road tripping out to Wilpena Pound in the Akara Flinders Ranges, then heading up to Arkaroola village just outside the Gammon Ranges before making our way back to Adelaide. I was also very lucky to be driving an Ineos Grenadier for the whole trip. Seeing places like this is a pretty big bucket list item for any four-wheel drive owner, and it's definitely somewhere I want to get back to properly one day with the Patrol or the Landcruiser. Then, around the same time, my wife and I were also pushing pretty hard to put our house on the market and finally make a move we've been talking about for years. That meant countless weekends painting gutters, decks, and fences, fixing things around the kitchen and house, and tackling some pretty major flooring repairs. Whenever we weren't working on the house, we were squeezing in inspections for places we might potentially move to. The checklist for what we wanted was pretty long, but one of the biggest things for me was having a detached shed so that I could actually keep working on the 40 series and whatever else inevitably ends up in there. Funnily enough, after all that effort, we decided to stay put for the short term and keep improving on the current place with the goal of eventually moving on to our dream property. And then, on top of all that, I've been trying to repair the roof on the 40, along with everything else that the Landcruiser is needed, while squeezing in some much needed work on the Patrol too, including upgrading it to a 100 amp alternator. So that's where I've been. It's been a pretty hectic few months, but we're finally getting back into it. Right, the new rails are done in this roof and they are pretty much as good as they're going to get before I put it back in. I've roughly test fitted the roof and made sure that all the new bolt holes are lining up where they should be and it fits the way it's going to need to. Ground back all my welds here. Looks horrendous, but it's going to be as good as it needs to be and it's not going to be seen for the foreseeable future. Once those seals are all down, it's going to look fine. The last thing I want to do... Last thing I want to do is go through and actually patch up a few little tiny bits and pieces around the edge of this roof. Those rails were the main structural thing that needed to be fixed, but there is still some cosmetic bits that aren't necessarily providing structure, but I'd still like to tackle them while the roof's off and just get it as best as I can. Still not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a lot better than it was. There is also a bunch of fiberglass on the front of this, and I don't know how much I want to dig into that. I'm gonna try and cut it back and clean it up and probably get a little bit more metal in there where I can, but if I start cutting into it and realizing a good portion of the roof is made of it, I think I'm probably leaving it. So, moving on to the last little metal bits. The main goal with this roof is just longevity. I definitely could keep chasing a better finish, but it's still never gonna be as good as starting with a rust-free replacement roof. What I'm really trying to do is stop water getting back in and stop any more rust from forming. So, for these little sections that'll never be seen once the roof's back on, I honestly don't care what they look like, as long as they're sealed up properly and structurally sound. Just about to nip up a couple of mistakes I made earlier when cutting out little extra gaps for this roof, and actually got a little bit too eager and went through there, which is fine. A little weld will fix that up. But doing so has actually revealed a few other little impurities in around the roof, which I'm gonna have to tackle. I don't care how bad this roof comes out looking. I don't care if it looks awful, if the finished result isn't perfect. Biggest thing I want out of it is to not let water into the 40 series. So if I can make sure that it's watertight from the outside, then happy days. It could be worse. Just gonna move on to that now. From here, I'm gonna have to go around every edge of this thing and see if I can spot any holes that are gonna come through and make sure I seal them up. Very possibly gonna have to silicone seal the entire edges of the awning. We'll see how we go. Anyway, first thing I need to get back to is just tacking up these last little bits of the underneath that I was doing. Just about to pack it in for the evening. I've only got about an hour to spend on this before we're actually heading out for dinner. Yeah, finish work for the day, come back, weld, go eat food. That's the plan for the day. That is looking a lot more structurally sound than it was. It was looking pretty rotten. That would just about complete my intent for fixing up the rails on this roof. There is a lot more that I'm planning to get through, particularly out the front here where there is a lot of very suspicious looking fiberglass. That's a job for another day. Happy with that for now. Moving on shortly. You'll see in a second. I should have done a little segment of all the work that I've been doing on this through the week. Monday, Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Friday. Let's put a big thing up there. Friday afternoon, I'm about to work on this again for a little tiny bit. I'm nearing completion of the end of this. There's a couple of little tiny holes I've identified that still need to be plugged up with a welder. Then I just need to dress it up. I'm still deciding whether I want to paint this entire thing or keep it patina. Gonna see how I go. Anyway, doing a little bit of this afternoon. Bit of a rude discovery on what I was hoping was not completely fiberglass though, under here. That's no fun. Other than that, it looks mostly good. Maybe a little bit there. See how much of that I want to peel back. All right, weekend. It's actually Sunday. I didn't get much chance to work on this thing yesterday. Activities around the house took priority, so doing a big bunch of back garden needed a giant trim out. Same with the front, done all the mowing. Did a bunch of things around the house, couple of tip runs. All in all, I didn't get a chance to touch this yesterday as much as I was hoping to. Today, don't really have much chance to touch this either. We're actually going to a family outing up in Brisbane. So I've got, about 30 minutes to work on this. So I'm doing that, putting a little bit of time in where I can to work on this. I want this roof on soon. I'm nearing the end of it.
Oh, hell no, man.
I'm gonna have to deal with this whole fiberglass mess at the front, but for the most part, everything's looking good around the outsides of this thing. Today, I'm just gonna cut a few little holes, and if I have time, tack in some new little bits in these front little bits here. All right, done, on the dot. See you tomorrow. For the few sections on the outer skin of the roof that need patching, I'm putting a bit more effort into welding fresh metal in properly. It's still never going to be perfect, but by this point I'm feeling a lot more confident with the MIG and a lot better at trimming little patches to fit the holes properly. It still requires a fair bit of grinding back, and with that comes a few little pinholes that will need filling again. That's just part of the process. But once I'm finally happy with it, I'm shining a light underneath of it to see if anything is noticeable. Seeing no light shining through anywhere is a pretty satisfying moment, and a good sign there aren't any holes left for water to get through either. This is about to be an exciting or devastating time, depending on how you look at things and depending on what I uncover under here. I'm gonna start peeling away this fiberglass, which has been hastily added. I would say. The top side's a little bit cleaner in how it's been done, but clearly is well past its use by date. All this needs to come off. I'm gonna start with the underneath and maybe see what I'm working with here. Ideally, I don't wanna have to like cut and shut the whole front of this thing, but I wanna see how much metal needs replacing, and I ideally don't wanna be replacing it with any kind of bog or fiberglass, but we'll see how that plan goes. All right, let's go. Thought this might have been able to crack off just by lifting it, but it doesn't seem to want to do that very easily, and I don't want it to break the metal that is left there. Let's see if I can give it some help. Oh God.
First assessment is there's a lot going on with this. It looks like the bog was holding a good portion of this lip on there, and I can see quite a few holes through to the other side which have fiberglass. I'm curious how much of this I can weld and how much I should patch up, but we'll keep digging for a little bit. Just moving out here for the second so I can cut back whatever surface rust and leftover bog and whatever's under here and not get it all the way through the garage as much as I can. I'm treading carefully because I don't want to have to redo this entire front, but I can quickly see that I might be, depending how deep I go in here. Anyway, give us a go. I'm kind of at the point of no return with this. I'm still not certain I've got the skills to dig myself out of the hole that I've created, but there's not really any way to pedal backwards at this point, so I'm just pushing on. Oh God, this can't be good. Oh my God. That's no good. All right, well, the result is quite a bit more disastrous on this thing than I had hoped, but it's probably not as bad as it could have been. We knew it was going to be bad, but I'm here now. The plan is to get as much of this fiberglass off as I can, and then I'm going to reassess what I'm doing here. I'd love to get all new metal in there. How much time I've got to do that, we'll see. All right, well, I'm off to go buy some steel because it turns out that I need a lot more of it than I was anticipating. And at the moment, I don't have much of a plan other than just buy more steel and get welding. I was hoping maybe I might have been able to weld in a donor roof, but they do rust out from those areas a lot. So pretty much where I'm having to fix is where they all rust. So it might be up to me to make it, but I'm considering all other options here now and just realized I forgot my wallet. This would probably be the point in time where I should call it and just get a new roof, which you can buy. They're repop roofs from China. They're about 600 bucks. So I was trying to avoid spending that. I'm pushing on. I've got a little bit too much time invested in this, and wouldn't be very excited for you guys if the title of this video was I bought a new roof and just showed me handing over money. So we're gonna try and do what I can with this. Not sure what I'm gonna do about the corners, but I think there is enough of the profile that I can follow here and just try and learn how to bend metal and weld it in. So we're gonna do that. Good chance it's gonna turn out looking horrendous. I've went and got some replacement steel this morning, and I've got a dolly, which I think will best suit this job. I've got no idea what I'm doing, so see what happens. That's the metal I've got. That's the dolly I've got. I've got 2 days and 0 excuses to get as much of this as I can done. Let's go. Quick little explainer here. Turns out the audio didn't come through despite me holding the microphone in my hand. The front gutter was almost completely detached from the roof skin because of the rust. It was only being held in place by a few tiny sections of metal, which just happened to be enough to keep the original shape of the roof. The moment I cut those rusty sections away, that original profile would be gone, and I'd basically be making it up as I went. To avoid that, I welded a few small temporary tabs. They could be removed later, but they held everything in position while I got started, giving me a much better chance of preserving the factory shape. Definitely wasn't a foolproof plan, but I think it gave me the best chance of ending up with a good result. I'm not shy about saying all the metal bending I'm doing here is full cowboy spec. None of this is the right way to do it. I'm just making do with what I've got and getting the job done. But it has definitely opened my eyes to how useful a proper metal brake would be, so that's gone straight onto the one-day shopping list for the shed.
My expectations aren't high here, but despite my brutal fabrication practices, seeing this first bent piece sitting in place gave me a bit of confidence that this might actually turn out alright. The front gutter is hanging on by a thread, but it's just enough to weld the newly shaped metal into it. The best way I can think to do this is with some spot welds to keep everything firmly attached. Now seeing the first piece tacked in place, I'm feeling some really good motivation to keep pushing on. I really can't express how much I'm just pushing on with this out of sheer willpower. You can tell my garage really isn't set up for this kind of work, and I'm sure my fabrication skills are the same, but I have to get this job done one way or another. That's enough for tonight. Time to pack up. Made a whole lot of progress yesterday, and the prospect of this actually coming out not looking half cooked is looking good so far. It's Sunday and I've got a good portion of the day to get stuck into this, and I'm hoping to get at least to these edges, but I'd very much like to hustle through and get a fully sealed roof. We'll see how we go. Got a lot of work to do. Let's go. I need a metal brake, I think, something like that. This seems to work. I'm still not entirely sure what I'm going to do once I get to the corners for this roof. The front profile is easy enough to bend to a general shape, but once you start having to curve the metal, it's really past my skill set. All I know is once I get the new metal to those corners, I'll have a much better idea on how to move forward. Just thought I'd give you a closer look at one of these pieces before they go in. It's probably gonna end up looking like something out of Mad Max by the time I'm done here, but I'm hoping I can smooth everything out and make it look a little bit cleaner. But I've just gone through and folded every piece kind of generally as much as I can to follow the original profile of the roof. I think I've got it down to a pretty fine art. Obviously there's some pretty solid kinks along there, but at the end of the day, this roof is going to be fully sealed. It's going to be almost completely metal. There might be some bog going over the end of it just to kind of smooth things out, but certainly not to fill any holes. I'm pretty happy so far with how this is going. In it goes. The dolly I bought for this wasn't entirely going to waste, as I figured it would be a great way to smooth out the folds I'd made. And no, I'm definitely not using the right hammer for this. Well, another weekend is gone. It is Monday, but I'm back in the shed after a day of work and trying to get stuck back into this. Got a lot done over the weekend. Majority of the front on this roof is done. Now I've just got to focus on the corners, which definitely seems like the hardest bit, but now with the front done, it seems a lot more achievable. So I've been working on that. Don't know how long it's going to take me, but I'm powering on. I'm determined to get this thing all sealed up, and I think I'm going to paint it afterwards to hide all my mistakes, because there'll be a lot. I'm trying to brainstorm some ways on how to make this corner without it looking completely cooked. I think I've got a bit of a plan. Started by cleaning up all these edges and roughing out the spots that I want to weld back into there. What I've got is a little bit of scrap sheet metal that I've been using in various locations along the 40, but I've noticed that this curve actually meets almost the same profile as of how the front of this curves there, which will be great to fill in along there. But what I'm thinking, this side isn't a perfect example because it's been fiberglass in the past and it actually doesn't really match the exact profile of it, but that was there. What I'm thinking is roughing in those edges on both sides down to about the corner here, and then splicing a center bit in there to give me a little bit of structure, and then I can kind of fill in the gaps roughly. It's going to be a case of pivot as I go, see how it turns out and adjust as necessary, but I think that's going to be my best plan of attack in order to fill this in and for it to look half reasonable. That's enough progress for tonight, I think. I'm pretty stoked how far I've got through with that. I can start getting those tacked up and in place and configure them the way I want, and then fill in the extra little bits there. Love to keep working late in the night, but it's getting too loud with this grinder. So back again tomorrow. See you then. I'm really not stoked about how this was tacked down, so I've decided to pull this one back up and redo it. The more I can get this right the first time, the better it'll look in the end. And being the driver's side, the side I'm going to see every time I get in the car, I really wanted this to look right. Once that's sorted, I move over to the passenger side and get the main corner pieces tacked in before making up the last little filler pieces. Little did I know though, my night was about to come to a pretty abrupt end. I fucked up last night while working on this thing, which was because I was not being careful, which resulted in what potentially could have been a much worse injury. So I just thought I'd take a quick little moment to give a reminder. Things can always catch you by surprise, and that's exactly what happened with me last night. While using a flap disc, relatively harmless on this little piece, that doesn't look very harmless. Somewhere the disc caught it and rammed it right into my thumb and then shot it halfway across the garage. I don't want to oversell the injury. It wasn't that bad. So gone in, cleaned it up, and unfortunately turned into me blacking out from it. Woke up to my wife trying to shake me up. Oi, just tell him you're afraid of blood. But essentially what happens for me is the heart rate's dropped, blood pressure's dropped, and just lights out. So the injury itself is not that bad, but it's caused something worse for me. But I really want to establish here that I was lucky that I was just holding this piece while grinding it, and I was wearing safety glasses, I was wearing earplugs as well for the noise of the grinder. But little sharp little piece like this, I should have had it in a vise or something like that. I was being lazy and quick and rushed. So just shouting that out quick little reminder, be careful with what you're working on. Anyway, I'm taking a day or so off this and I keep powering on with it, but we're nearly done, nearly sealed up here. Just a quick reminder, be smart when you're working in the garage. All right, I'm back into it this afternoon. I'm gonna try and finish up these last corners on this and get it all fully sealed up. And with some luck, I can start looking at some paint shortly. With everything fully tacked in, it was my last chance to smooth everything out as much as I could before finally welding everything up for good. Welding from the inside, I'm taking my time and making sure every gap gets filled, because if I leave any little holes here, that's just another way for water to get back into this roof. Just about everything should be fully sealed there. The welds look horrendous, but I will flap them back. I had to do a few welds on the outside. No one's going to see it from the inside, and the ones from the outside I'll clean up a little bit and make sure that it all looks reasonable before any paint goes on there. But the last thing I'm going to do this evening is actually flip this over and see if I can fill it up with water and maybe just see if any drips come through. It's not going to be a comprehensive test, but it'll be a way to do a bit of a real world test on whether any leaks are going to come through. If I can see anything in that happening, then I can adjust and fix it before it's painted or whatever. But right now I just kind of want to do that and be satisfied that for the most part it's sealed. And if it's not, then I got more work to do, so that's fine. All right, well, welder's going away for tonight because I'm most definitely not doing any more of that tonight, whether I need to or not. So far, so good. We're only testing one bit I've welded so far, which has been this. The main test is obviously the stuff I've just done, but it's nice to know there's no holes in this that I haven't spotted yet. Well, I mean, this is probably saving me already, but go on there, and there's a bit of moisture under there already. Yeah, there you go, it's coming through there. Right, so we've got a pretty significant leak right there, but I'm pretty sure I know exactly why that is, because I've had to try and weld along this original spine that's in there and just clearly I haven't got it fully, so I think that'll be pretty straightforward to fix. Everywhere else seems pretty good. There's a bit of water all over the place as I've kind of sloshed everything about, but doesn't seem to actually be coming out of anywhere else. So I'd say we're all good. I had some repairs all up the back here, pushed all the water up to the back and nothing's come through, so I think we're good so far. That'll do for today. I'll get this water out of here, but packing up for the evening. We are nearing the tail end of this job. Everything's pretty much sealed, so just got to make it look pretty now. Finish up a few little bits and pieces that don't look good before I'm probably going to put some bog over the top of it. But other than that, tidy it up generally and put some paint on it. All right, I'm hoping I'm up to my last weld on this, which is fantastic news. This has well and truly become probably my most involved project on this so far, and that says a lot because there's been a lot going on with this vehicle. Welds are done. Next thing I'm moving on to is going around and doing some rust converter over as many spots as I can put on this thing. And then I'm gonna move on to siliconing up all the gutters on this before I get everything all prepped for paint. time has come to start preparing this for paint. First thing I need to do is actually get some primer on all these bare metal surfaces, but before I do that, I'm going to clean up all these bits of leftover paint, get away any flaking stuff, and then get this coated. And then the plan from there is a teeny little bog on some spots where there's imperfections, plenty of them. Going to do some silicone all the way through the gutters, try and keep everything watertight. And then once everything's sealed, primed, get some top coat on there. Just a very quick disclaimer here, like most things you'll see on this channel, I am not a professional at it. I'm not an auto body painter. What I'm doing isn't necessarily the correct way to do it. If you see something you don't like, feel free to comment. I'm living my life usually one ChatGPT prompt through to another to get by and work out how to do things. And that's pretty much exactly what I'm doing here. That mixed with a little bit of past experience, but very little. So if it's wrong, don't do what I'm doing. I'm quickly recognizing this probably would have been better to do before I rust converted everything, which I'm gonna have to make sure everything's dry and rust free before I put any paint down. But anyway, we're here now. I've had to move things back indoors because it was just getting far too windy outside to even comprehend laying some paint down. But I've come back in here after cleaning everything up. I've taken a heat gun to all the edges and warmed everything up, got all the moisture out of there as much as I possibly can, so it should be completely dry all the way through here. Gone through and wax and grease remover everything. Now I'm just about to go lay some primer down on this. And that might be me for tonight, I think. Get the primer on and let that sit overnight, and then I need to put a little bit of bog into this. Checking in on today's job, literally all I'm doing is put a nice big bead of silicone, well, some of this stuff, all around the edges of these gutters. I want no leaks. The silicone I'm using here is Sikaflex 227 and is touted as one of the best to use for automotive seam sealing. So I'm taking no prisoners and absolutely filling these gutters with it. Plus a few spots are welded just to be safe. I've made it no secret that this isn't going to turn out perfect, but before laying some paint, I wanted to do my best to remove the surface rust from inside the roof. A quick wire brush before laying down some primer was the way to go. Then it was time to move on to some bog, Bondo, body filler, whatever you want to call it. I hate this stuff. I started off humble with a sanding block, but quickly gave up here in favour of the electric sander to bring the shape into the bog. Alright, well, it's a Monday night. How many times have I said that over this roof restoration? I've just done sanding all the bog on the top side of this. But the last thing I want to do tonight is actually get a proper coat of the main body paint on the inside of this, and I want to let it cure for a couple of days over this week, and I can get stuck into doing some insulation on the inside of this before everything goes back on. But I want that paint to be fully cured before I do any of that, so unfortunately that means waiting and getting it done as soon as possible. I hadn't used much clear yet on the 40, as I want as much patina look to remain on it, but for the inside of the roof, I wanted this as finished and as protected as possible before laying down some insulation layers. Once that had dried, it was time to get stuck back into the other side and start prepping it for base coat.
All right, well, I was about to get completely rained on for the afternoon, so it looks like I have to proceed with doing this inside here, and that's facing the wrong direction. All right, we are at a crucial milestone, and if you've been following along this far, I'm sure you know this is not going to turn out perfect, and I am fine with that. Time to prime. That rhymes, how good. All right, prime is going on this, and then I'm hoping to get base coat on later tonight, and hopefully clear as well. We'll see how we go. Probably shouldn't be doing all three of those in one night, especially not in my makeshift paint booth, which is my shed. Yeah, wish me luck. Okay. I've been having this debate with myself on what primer to use for this roof, especially before putting any bog down, and pretty much all the advice I came across pointed towards epoxy. Long story short, I couldn't get a hold of the epoxy I wanted in time, so I ended up using etch primer instead. But I finally tracked down the epoxy for this coat, so this is what I'm sticking with before I move on to primer filler and then base coat. Holy dooly, this thing is looking hot on the inside. I have just done an entire video on installing some Car Builders products inside this, but that's going to be a separate video coming out shortly to give all you fine folks some information about the different Car Builders stuff that can go in there. This roof is ready to go back on the Landcruiser. So without further ado, we're going to get into that because I am very sick of looking at this topless turd. All right, let's get it done. All right, I've got some roof seals here, so I haven't even opened these yet, so it'll be time to find out if I definitely ordered the right ones. FJ45 pickup, HA45, but it should be the same. After a little bit of head scratching and looking at some photos from when this came apart, got everything I need, but I think the best way to do these is put them back on here rather than trying to put them on the roof. This one now. Oh no, that one needs to wait. I have to put some brackets on to stop me getting in here. All right, those brackets are in. Okay, roof seal lining up where it should. There's a seal, I still don't know where it bloody goes. All right, I've been struggling for the last hour to try and work out where this weather seal goes. It's a genuine part. That's the genuine part number. Haven't been able to find a video on YouTube that actually explains properly where this goes. It's quite unique, obviously, elongated hole, so it's not just one bolt hole or anything. It's got a little pad there for something. The best amount of information I've been able to see on the internet is it goes somewhere in this vicinity on the roof, but it doesn't show where.
Roof is on and I'm starting to bolt everything down. I'm hoping this little spot is going to help anyone that might be trying to do the same job. These are notoriously tricky to line everything up and get everything in there. I haven't even started the bolts along the back there, but I haven't touched them in terms of welding or cutting or anything like that, so they should line up as factory. Nothing's changed there. The main ones I have a problem with is the ones that I've done, which is fine. They're mostly lining up. The other issue I'm experiencing is getting the front of the roof low enough to come down to those bolts there. Now, the temptation when putting this all together, these rails separate from the cab, and obviously that's what bolts to the roof, but the temptation is to bolt them up rigid and then line the roof into that. What I'm finding is working so far is unbolting everything in this corner. So there's a bolt there, there's a bolt there, and there's a little bracket there, which is what connects to that. So I've taken all that off so that this can adjust up and down, left and right, and allow me to get these in, but also allows the roof to go as low as it possibly can. And it's gonna have to squeeze down as much as it can on that new seal as well. But that's slowly allowing me to get these bolts in and also getting it lower and lower there. So I'm gonna configure that a little bit in a sec. This is really hard to film, but I'm hoping that advice helps anyone that's trying to do a similar job. Good luck, you got this. By the way, for the life of me, I cannot work out where these weather strips go on a HJ45. This seal kit came from Mr. Landcruiser as the big main seal and also the seal that the front of the roof sits on, but it also came with these two. I'm certain it doesn't go in there. I'm sure I'm wrong, but it didn't come out of my car when I pulled it apart, and there is no logical place that I can see that it goes into. So if you know, let me know. I would have loved to have worked it out and be able to explain it for someone else that's doing it, but I cannot. I don't know if I should be showing this one on YouTube, but how's this for a trick of the trade? Trying to get all the bolts to line up on the roof to the cab, and every bolt is in except for the back 6 along the back. So I've had to bring it further forward. Little ratchet strap to the rescue for a little bit of leverage to lurch the back of the cab back towards the front so the bolts line up. So far it's worked. Don't do this at home, I guess. This ratchet strap thing has been working really well with lining everything up. Obviously, the back of this cab isn't attached from anything from the top other than the roof until that's there. And I think what's happened is the roof coming off has caused it to push backwards a little bit. Who knows? Things have changed. Anyway, check this out. Probably is also fair to say a 40-year-old cab on a 4-drive has probably flexed a lot in its life, and things don't necessarily line up exactly where they should. So yeah, you probably shouldn't have to do this, but it seems to me that there's a lot of reasons that you could have to. This build just keeps giving. I'm down to my very last bolt going into the roof, and it seems I need to die grind out a bit for it to fit. I've already stripped one bolt, trying to get it in there. I just can't line it up, but I reckon a little bit of trimmed out in the top. I am to blame for this one because it's one of the holes that I drilled out in the new piece of steel in there. Hoping I can grind that out and should be sweet. All right, that would be every bolt in the roof. They're not tight, but they're in. Putting this entire roof has nearly broken me, to be honest. It has taken me a better part of a full day just to get those bolts into their spots. I'm so done today. All I'm gonna do is tighten everything up and then it's officially done, but I'm never taking another Landcruiser roof off. Certainly not this one. That wraps up the complete restoration on the Landcruiser roof. If you've made it this far into the video, I really appreciate you watching. It is a long one, but it was an absolutely excruciating experience getting this thing done, starting from what I thought was a little tiny fix on the roof mounting situation through to replacing a heap of rust and fiberglass. This thing needed a total overhaul, but I'm really stoked to see it up there. If you've just landed on this video, haven't seen any of my other videos, go check out the entire build series on this Landcruiser. There's heaps more coming up. I'm very excited to get it on the road, and I've already done a heap so far, including brakes. So if you're doing your own build on a HJ45, HA45, any 40 series, or even a Landcruiser, go check it out. You might enjoy it. It might help you out with some tips on what you're doing as well. Coming up as well, I've got some exciting videos, including just putting the front windscreen in there. And if you're tackling anything similar to that on any vehicle, I've hopefully got some good information for you there. Like I said, go watch some other videos if you haven't seen them. Give it a like, give it a comment. Really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Bloody appreciate it. Thanks so much. Have a good one. Catch us next time.